The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for kilometers under a dome of stars. 3 massive thrones sat in the center, each one built for a different alien species. The Zephyrian throne was made of pure crystal that sang with a low, haunting melody. The hegemony seat pulsed with living metal that shifted and moved like breathing flesh. The Vorthan throne floated in the air, surrounded by swirling energy that bent light around it. High Chancellor Kithara of the Zephyrians stood first. Her body was tall and thin, made of living crystal that caught the starlight and threw it back in rainbow patterns. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music boxes and wind chimes. "We are here because of the human problem," she said. Her words echoed through the hall. "For 200 years, we have watched these creatures spread across our galaxy like a disease. They breed too fast. They expand too quickly. They take worlds that do not belong to them." General Vex 9 of the hegemony rose from his throne. His body was part machine, part living tissue. Cables and wires ran through his flesh, connecting to computers that helped him think. His voice came out as a mechanical growl. "The humans are weak," he said. "Their ships are small. Their weapons are primitive. They still use metal bullets and chemical explosives like savages. But there are so many of them. They build colonies faster than we can count them." The third figure did not stand. Overmind Zeltron of the Vorthan Collective simply floated higher in the air. He had no solid body, just pure mental energy shaped into something that looked almost human. When he spoke, his words appeared directly in the minds of the others. "I have looked into their thoughts," his mental voice whispered. "They are chaotic, undisciplined. They cannot even agree among themselves about simple things, yet they keep spreading. They take more worlds every year. Soon they will reach our sacred territories." The 3 rulers looked at a hologram that appeared in the center of the hall. It showed the galaxy as a 3-dimensional map. Large areas were colored in different shades: blue for Zephyrian space, red for hegemony territory, and purple for Vorthan worlds. But scattered throughout were thousands of small green dots. "Each green dot is a human colony," Kithara said. 200 years ago, there was only one. Their homeworld called Earth. Now look at them. They are everywhere." The hologram zoomed in on specific areas. Human colonies sat right next to the borders of all 3 empires. Some were in systems that the Council had marked as buffer zones, empty space that separated the great powers. "They are like insects," Vex 9 growled. "You kill 100 and 1,000 more appear. Their breeding rate is disgusting. Most species take 50,000 years to spread to 10 star systems. Humans did it in 50 years. Overmind Zelthron's mental voice grew colder. "I have touched the minds of their leaders. They do not fear us. They should fear us. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have ships larger than their cities. Yet, when our diplomats speak to them, they act as if we are equals." The 3 rulers fell silent. For millennia, they had divided the galaxy between them. Other species knew their place. They either served one of the 3 empires or stayed in the small territories they were allowed to have. But humans were different. They took worlds without asking permission. They built colonies in forbidden zones. They acted like they owned the galaxy. "What do our scouts report about their military?" Kithara asked. A Zephyrian officer stepped forward. His crystal body was smaller and dimmer than the High Chancellor's. "Their fleets are laughable," he said. "Their largest ships are maybe 2 kilometers long. Most are much smaller. They use kinetic weapons, metal projectiles fired by magnetic rails. They have some energy weapons, but they are weak compared to ours. Their ships have no shields that we can detect." A hegemony commander made of living metal nodded. "Our bioships can adapt to any weapon they use. Even if they surprise us, we will evolve defenses within minutes. Their technology is at least 500 years behind ours." Overmind, Zelthron's thoughts rippled through the air. "Their minds are their greatest weakness. Humans feel fear, anger, and confusion in battle. When my psychic warriors attack their thoughts, they will break like glass. No human mind can withstand a direct mental assault." The 3 rulers looked at each other. The decision was obvious. "We will give them one chance," Kithara announced. "One final opportunity to know their place." The Great Hall filled with activity. Thousands of alien diplomats and military officers began preparing for what would be the largest joint operation in galactic history. 3 empires that usually competed with each other were now working together. The human problem was too big for any one empire to handle alone. 3 days later, the ultimatum reached Earth. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station. humanity's military headquarters built inside Earth's moon. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent 30 years fighting pirates and defending human colonies from alien raiders, but she had never faced anything like this. The message played on the main screen. High Chancellor Kithara's crystal form spoke in perfect human English, though her voice still sounded like singing glass. "To the human species," she began, "you have spread across our galaxy without permission. You have taken worlds that do not belong to you. You have built colonies in sacred spaces that have been empty for good reasons. This ends now." The image changed to show the galaxy map. Most of human space was highlighted in red. "You have 72 hours to begin withdrawal from all systems except Earth, and 3 others that we will allow you to keep. Any human presence beyond these boundaries after the deadline will be considered an act of war. Do not mistake our patience for weakness. We have weapons that can destroy stars. We have ships that can crack worlds. We have armies that have conquered 1,000 species." The message ended. The command center was silent. "How many colonies would we have to abandon?" asked General Park, the head of ground forces. 1,800, replied the computer. "That means leaving behind 40 million people." "They're not giving us enough time to evacuate everyone," said Admiral Torres. "Even with every transport ship we have, we could only move maybe 10 million people in 72 hours. Sarah Chen stared at the star map. Red warning symbols marked the positions of alien fleets. The enemy had more ships than humans had ever seen in one place. Each alien vessel was larger than humanity's biggest battleships. "Ma'am," said a young officer, "we're receiving surrender recommendations from the civilian government. They say we can't fight 3 galactic empires at once." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the human families living on distant worlds, children who had been born among alien stars, farmers and miners and scientists who had spent their whole lives building something new. All of them would be abandoned. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," she said finally. "Tell them to begin Operation Nightfall." "Ma'am," the young officer looked confused. "I don't show any operation by that name in our files." Sarah smiled for the first time in days. "You wouldn't. It's been classified above your level. But it's time the galaxy learned something about humans." She turned to face the room full of officers. "Send the response to the Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity respectfully declines their generous offer." The room erupted in shocked voices. Several officers started to protest. "Admiral," General Park said, "we can't fight them. Look at the numbers. They have ships 10 times larger than ours. They have weapons we don't understand. This is suicide." Sarah Chen's smile grew wider. "General, the one thing those 3 empires never bothered to learn about humans is our history. We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We're the people who looked at our own moon and decided to turn it into a fortress." She pointed at the star map. "They think they know what human ships look like. They think they understand human weapons. They've been watching our patrol fleets and thinking that's all we have." The Admiral walked to a secure terminal and entered. A long code. New symbols appeared on the star map. 12 massive shapes that had been hidden in deep space. They're about to learn the difference between what we show them and what we actually build. The Zephyrian war fleet gathered at the edge of their territory like a forest of crystal trees floating in space. Each ship was a work of art, carved from living crystal that sang with harmonic frequencies. The largest vessels stretched 5 kilometers from end to end, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that focused sound waves into weapons capable of shattering planets. Admiral Thais stood on the bridge of the flagship Resonance. Her crystal body glowed with excitement. "Show me the human fleet positions," she commanded. The tactical display lit up with information gathered by scout ships. Dozens of small human vessels patrolled near their colonies. The largest was barely 2 kilometers long. Most were much smaller, tiny things that looked like metal insects compared to the majestic Zephyrian crystal ships. "Are these really the ships that threaten the galaxy?" asked her second-in-command. "They look like toys." "The humans reproduce quickly," Thais replied. "Like bacteria. But bacteria can be sterilized." She gestured to the display. "Look at their weapons. Metal projectiles fired by magnetic force, chemical explosives, energy beams so weak they would barely scratch our hulls. It will be a massacre." 3 star systems away, the hegemony fleet prepared for war in a very different way. General Vex 9 stood in the biochamber of his flagship Adaptation. Around him, living walls pulsed with blood vessels and nerve clusters. The ship was not built. It was grown. Like all hegemony vessels, it could evolve and change during battle. "Computer, show me analysis of human weapons," he ordered. Data flowed through his mechanical implants directly into his brain. "Railguns, missile systems, particle beams, nuclear warheads," he read aloud. "Primitive technology. Our bio-armor will adapt to their attacks within minutes." He walked to a viewing port where he could see the rest of his fleet. Hundreds of bioships floated in formation, their hulls shifting and changing even in peaceful space. Some looked like giant sea creatures with tentacles and fins. Others resembled insects with multiple eyes and claws. Each ship was unique, evolved for a specific purpose. "The humans use the same weapons over and over," Vex 9 continued. "They lack imagination. When we encounter their railguns, our ships will grow thicker armor. When they fire missiles, we will develop point defense systems. By the time the battle is half over, their weapons will be useless." In the deepest part of Vorthon's space, overmind Zelthron prepared his psychic fleet in ways the physical world could barely understand. The Vorthon ships were made of solid thought given form. They appeared as ghostly outlines filled with swirling energy. The largest vessels existed partially in normal space and partially in the realm of pure mind. Zelthron floated in the center of his flagship, surrounded by 100 other psychic warriors. Their minds were linked together in a network that could break the sanity of entire planetary populations. "I have touched human thoughts," he told his followers. "They are chaotic and undisciplined, full of fear and doubt. When we attack their minds, they will surrender immediately. No physical weapons can defend against mental assault." The psychic warriors pulsed with agreement. They had conquered dozens of species by simply making their enemies too insane to fight. Humans would be no different. But while the three great empires prepared for easy victory, they missed important signs. Zephyrian scouts reported only the small human patrol fleets. They never detected the massive construction sites hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. Their crystal technology was perfect for detecting solid objects in open space, but useless for finding things hidden inside rocks or clouds. Hegemony bioships sent out genetic sensors that could smell enemy life forms across star systems. But they found only normal human colonies with normal human populations. The biosensors were designed to detect organic threats. They completely missed the quantum-shielded construction platforms where artificial intelligence worked alongside human engineers. Vorthon psychics probed human minds across the galaxy, reading thoughts and emotions. They sensed fear and uncertainty, exactly what they expected from a primitive species facing superior enemies. But they only touched the minds of civilian colonists and patrol crews. They never detected the deep space facilities where human consciousness merged with computer networks in ways no alien species had ever imagined. In a hidden shipyard built inside a hollowed-out moon, Admiral Chen stood before something that defied belief. The construction bay stretched for 50 kilometers in every direction. At its center floated a ship so large it had its own gravity field. "Status report on the Prometheus," she ordered. Chief Engineer Williams checked his displays. "All systems, Green Admiral. Quantum fold drives are charged. Manufacturing bays are loaded with raw materials. AI integration is at 100%. The ship was impossible by every law of physics the galaxy knew. It was 47 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide. Its hull was made of materials that shouldn't exist, matter compressed and folded through quantum mechanics until it was stronger than neutron star material but lighter than aluminum. "How did we keep this secret for so long?" asked Captain Rodriguez. "Who would command one of the escort vessels?" "The aliens think they understand us," Chen replied. "They've been watching our patrol ships and thinking that's all we can build. They see us using kinetic weapons and assume we're primitive. They have no idea what humans can accomplish when we're properly motivated." She pointed to displays showing the interior of the massive ship. "The Prometheus isn't just a warship. It's a complete military-industrial complex. It can build entire fleets while traveling between stars. Every system is automated and controlled by AI that thinks faster than any organic brain." "What about the other Titans?" Rodriguez asked. 11 more just like this one," Chen said. "Each one hidden in a different system. Each one ready to deploy." She smiled grimly. "The aliens are about to learn why humans are the only species to weaponize their own moon. In the deepest levels of the shipyard, human technicians worked alongside artificial intelligences that existed as pure information. The AIs had no physical form, but they could control millions of robotic workers at once. Together, humans and machines had created something the galaxy had never seen. "Admiral," came a voice from the communication system. "We're receiving final positioning data from Intelligence Division." The main display showed the galaxy with the positions of all three alien fleets. They were moving into attack formation, confident in their superior numbers and technology. "They're not even trying to hide," Williams observed. Look at those formations. They're flying in parade formation like they're showing off. Why would they hide? Chen asked. They think they're fighting children with toys. They have no idea. We've been preparing for this moment for decades. She walked to the command center where a dozen human officers worked at stations connected to quantum computers. Each officer wore a neural interface that let them control multiple ship systems. With pure thought, it was technology that would have seemed like magic to the attacking aliens. Time to deadline? She asked. 18 hours, Admiral. Good. Signal all Titan-class vessels. Begin final preparations for Operation Nightfall. Across human space, 11 other massive ships received the signal. In asteroid fields and gas giant clouds, in the dark between stars and hidden behind planetary rings, the most powerful warships ever built began to move. The aliens had spent weeks positioning their fleets and preparing for battle. They had brought every weapon they knew how to use. They had planned for every possible human response based on what they thought human technology could do. But they had made one critical mistake. They assumed that the small human patrol ships they could see were the best humanity had to offer. They never considered that humans might have been hiding their true capabilities for decades. They were about to learn that humans had a long history of looking weak, right up until the moment they struck with overwhelming force. Earth's ancient wars had taught humanity many lessons, but the most important was this. When you're outnumbered, you don't fight fair. You build bigger weapons than anyone expects, you hit harder than anyone thinks possible, and you never let your enemies see what you're really capable of until it's too late for them to adapt. The countdown continued. In 18 hours, 3 galactic empires would discover that they had picked a fight with the wrong species. The deadline expired at exactly 00 Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Thys of the Zephyrian Fleet smiled as her crystal form began to glow brighter. Begin the cleansing, she ordered. All ships, advance to human colonies. Show them the power of Crystal Song. The Zephyrian Fleet moved forward in perfect formation. 300 crystal ships sang together in harmony, their combined voices creating sound waves that could shatter mountains. They approached the first human colony world expecting to find desperate defenders in tiny ships. Instead, they found empty space. Where are the human ships? Asked her second-in-command. Our scouts reported patrol vessels in this system. Probably hiding behind their planet, Thys replied. Cowards. It will not help them. But before the Zephyrians could reach the colony world, space itself seemed to tear open. A hole appeared in reality, growing larger and larger until it was 50 kilometers across. Through the opening came something that made no sense. It was a ship, but it was impossible. No ship could be that large. The sensors couldn't even measure it properly. By the crystal throne, whispered the tactical officer. It's 47 kilometers long. The UEN Prometheus emerged from quantum fold space like a metal mountain. Its hull was dark gray, covered in geometric patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. Along its sides were thousands of weapon ports, each one larger than an entire Zephyrian fighter. At its front was a bow section that looked like the head of some ancient Earth weapon, a ram designed to split enemy fleets in half. Impossible, Thys said. No species can build ships that large. The structural stresses alone would tear it apart. But the Prometheus was not alone. As it finished emerging from fold space, bays along its hull opened. Thousands of smaller ships poured out like metal insects. Each one was the size of a human destroyer, but they were being manufactured in real time. The massive ship was a factory that could build entire fleets while moving. Admiral, the communications officer said with fear in her crystal voice, the ship is hailing us. Put it through, Thys ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a human woman in a military uniform. She had gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice was calm and cold. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Nations Fleet. You have entered human space without permission. You have threatened human civilians. You have exactly 30 seconds to begin retreat, or we will consider you hostile. Thys laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Human, you pilot one ship. We are 300. Your vessel may be large, but size means nothing against the Crystal Song. All ships, target that abomination. Sing it to pieces. The Zephyrian Fleet opened fire. 300 crystal ships sang together in perfect harmony. Sound waves focused into beams of pure destruction lanced out toward the Prometheus. The weapons had enough power to crack a planet's crust. The beams struck the human ship and simply disappeared. Impossible, Thys whispered. Nothing can absorb the Crystal Song. Admiral Chen's image smiled coldly. You're right. We're not absorbing it. We're redirecting it. She paused. Prometheus, return fire. The front of the massive human ship opened like a flower. Inside was a single weapon that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was a railgun, but built on a scale that defied imagination. The magnetic rails stretched for kilometers inside the ship's hull. When it fired, the projectile was the size of a building. It moved at a significant fraction of light speed, accelerated by magnetic forces that could have powered a small star. The round struck the center of the Zephyrian formation and kept going. 12 crystal ships simply ceased to exist. They didn't explode or break apart. They were turned into powder by the impact. The shockwave from the projectile's passage shattered dozens more vessels like glass windows. "All ships, evasive maneuvers!" Tess screamed. But the Prometheus was already firing again. This time, the weapon was different. Plasma cannons along the ship's sides opened fire, each beam hot enough to melt asteroids. The Zephyrian ships tried to sing defensive harmonies, but their crystal hulls couldn't handle plasma at stellar temperatures. Within minutes, half the Zephyrian fleet was destroyed. The survivors fled in panic, their perfect formations broken. "Admiral," Chen turned to her crew. "Signal the other Titans. Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2. Across the galaxy, 11 more massive ships began to move. In hegemony space, General Vex 9 watched the reports from the Zephyrian battle with mechanical disbelief. "Show me the tactical data again," he ordered. The information flowed through his computer implants. Ship sizes, weapon yields, technological readings that made no sense. The humans have ships nearly 50 kilometers long. That's impossible. No material can handle the structural stress. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're detecting quantum fold signatures in our territory." "Impossible. Only we have fold technology." But the sensors didn't lie. Space was opening up in 3 different systems, and massive objects were emerging. The UN Titan Hercules appeared above the main hegemony fleet like a mechanical god. Its hull was different from the Prometheus, covered in modular weapon systems that could reconfigure themselves in real time. General Vex 9 activated his fleet's biosystems. "All ships, begin combat adaptation. Analyze enemy weapons and develop countermeasures." The hegemony ships started to change. Their living hulls grew thicker armor. New organs formed to handle energy weapons. Tentacles emerged to grab enemy projectiles. The Titan Hercules watched this process with electronic patience. Then it began cycling through weapons. First came plasma cannons. The bioships quickly adapted, growing reflective scales and heat-dispersing organs. The moment their adaptation was complete, the human ships switched to graviton torpedoes. The gravity weapons twisted space itself, crushing the bioships before they could evolve defenses. As soon as the fleet began developing gravity resistance, the Hercules switched to kinetic rounds. Building-sized projectiles tore through bioarmor that was still trying to adapt to the previous weapon. By the time the ships grew kinetic defenses, antimatter warheads were already exploding among them. "They're changing weapons faster than we can adapt," Vex 9 realized. "How many different systems do they have?" The answer came from his computer systems analyzing the enemy ship. Scanning indicates 847 different weapon configurations currently active, with manufacturing capacity for unlimited additional variations. The hegemony fleet, which had conquered countless enemies through adaptation, discovered that evolution meant nothing when facing an enemy that could change faster than biology allowed. In Vorthon space, overmind Zelthron felt the deaths of his allies across the galaxy. The psychic screams of dying Zephyrians and hegemony soldiers filled his mind with pain and confusion. "How are the humans doing this?" he asked his psychic warriors. "Their minds should be chaotic and weak." "Master," one of his followers replied, "we're detecting unusual mental patterns from the human ships. It's like their thoughts are connected to something else." Zelthron focused his powers and reached out toward the approaching human vessel. The UN Titan Athena was moving through his territory like a metal predator. He touched the minds of its crew and recoiled in shock. "They're not fully organic," he whispered. "Their consciousness is merged with artificial minds. When I attack their thoughts, I encounter computer firewalls and quantum encryption." The Vorthon fleet arranged itself in a psychic formation designed to break the sanity of entire planets. Hundreds of mind ships focused their mental powers on the approaching human vessel. The psychic assault struck the Athena like a tide of madness. It was enough mental force to drive 1 billion people insane, and it bounced off. The human crew weren't just wearing neural interfaces. They had actually merged their consciousness with artificial intelligence. When the Vorthon attack hit human minds, it encountered AI defensive systems that responded at computer speeds. The mental backlash was devastating. Psychic energy reflected back through the Vorthan network, overloading minds that had never experienced resistance. Across the fleet, psychic warriors fell into comas as their collective consciousness collapsed. Overmind Zeltron felt his power breaking apart. For the first time in his existence, he knew fear. Impossible, he whispered as his ship began to dissolve around him. We are pure thought. We are evolution beyond physical form. How can mere humans... The answer came from Admiral Chen's voice, broadcast across all frequencies. You made the same mistake every galactic empire makes, she said. You assumed that being old meant being wise. You assumed that being powerful meant being unbeatable. But you forgot the most important thing about humans. On screens across the galaxy, her image appeared to the scattered survivors of 3 great fleets. We're the species that looked at our own planet and decided it wasn't dangerous enough. So, we found ways to make it worse. We're the people who took our moon and turned it into a fortress. When the galaxy tries to tell us we can't do something, we take that as a challenge. The night was only half over, but already 3 galactic empires were learning that they had picked a fight with the wrong species. Space burned with the wreckage of ships that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. And in the darkness between stars, more human vessels were moving to finish what the ultimatum had started. High Chancellor Kythera stood in the emergency command center on the Zephyrian homeworld, watching her empire burn. The crystal walls around her were dark and silent. The harmonic network that connected all Zephyrian ships had gone quiet as vessel after vessel was destroyed. Report, she demanded, though her musical voice now sounded more like broken glass. 70% of our fleet is gone, her aide replied. The human ships are moving through our territory at will. They're not following any known tactical doctrine. They don't engage in honorable combat. They just appear, destroy everything, and move to the next target. Kythera watched the tactical display with growing horror. The human ships weren't conquering territory. They were systematically destroying every military installation they found. No negotiations, no demands for surrender, just methodical annihilation. Where did these ships come from? She asked. Our scouts reported only small human vessels. Intelligence believes the humans have been hiding their true capabilities for decades, the aide said. The ships they showed us were just patrol boats. These new vessels are their actual military. On the display, another icon vanished as a Zephyrian defense station was reduced to dust. The human ships were working in perfect coordination, striking multiple targets simultaneously across thousands of light years. General Vex 9 faced the same nightmare in the bio-chambers of his command center. The living walls pulsed with stress, chemicals as reports of defeat flooded in from across hegemony space. How many ships have we lost? He asked his computer systems. 81% of active fleet destroyed, came the mechanical reply. Remaining vessels are in full retreat. Adaptation protocols have failed completely. Vex 9 studied the battle. Data flowing through his implants. The humans weren't just technologically superior, they were tactically brilliant. Every time a bio-ship tried to evolve a defense, the enemy was already using a different weapon. Show me weapon analysis, he ordered. The data was staggering. Each human ship carried hundreds of different weapon systems. Plasma cannons, railguns, particle beams, antimatter warheads, gravity weapons, exotic energy projectors that the hegemony couldn't even identify. More disturbing, the ships could manufacture new weapons during battle. They're not just fighting us, Vex 9 realized. They're experimenting on us, testing how many different ways they can kill us. His bio-ship shuddered as another human vessel appeared nearby. This one was different, smaller than the massive Titans, but still larger than any hegemony dreadnought. It moved with predatory grace, like a shark circling wounded prey. Sir, the human ship is hailing us. Vex 9 activated the communication system. A human face appeared on his screens. A young woman with lieutenant's rank insignia. Hegemony vessel, she said in a bored voice. You have 30 seconds to shut down your weapons and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in immediate destruction. Boarding? Vex 9 was confused. Why would they want to board us? The human lieutenant shrugged. My captain wants to examine your biotechnology, something about understanding how you adapt so we can build better weapons to counter it. The casual tone was more terrifying than any threat. These humans weren't angry or excited about battle. They were clinical, professional. They were treating the destruction of galactic empires like a research project. All weapons fire, Vex 9 commanded. His ship's biocannons lashed out with living energy, weapons that could dissolve molecular bonds. The human vessel simply absorbed the attacks with shields that seemed to bend reality around them. Time's up, the lieutenant said. Thank you for the data. The human ship fired a single shot. Vex 9's flagship, which had survived 100 battles, simply came apart at the molecular level. In the deepest parts of Vorthan space, overmind Zelthron tried desperately to understand what was happening. His psychic powers, which could break the minds of entire planets, were useless against human ships. "Master," one of his remaining followers whispered into his thoughts, "the humans are jamming our collective consciousness. We cannot coordinate our fleets." Zelthron reached out with his mind and felt the truth. Wherever human ships appeared, the psychic network that connected all Vorthan vessels was being disrupted. The humans were using some kind of mental interference that turned the Vorthan's greatest strength into a weakness. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We are pure thought. Physical beings cannot interfere with mental energy." The answer came from an unexpected source. A human voice spoke directly into his mind, bypassing all his psychic defenses. "Because we're not purely physical anymore," the voice said. It belonged to Admiral Chen, but it was coming from inside his own thoughts. "When you tried to attack our minds, you opened a connection. Now, we're in your network." Zelthron felt terror as he realized what was happening. The humans hadn't just defended against psychic attack, they had turned it around and invaded the Vorthan collective consciousness. "Impossible," he whispered. "Organic minds cannot exist in pure thought space." "You're right," Chen's mental voice replied. "But we're not purely organic anymore. We merged our consciousness with artificial intelligence. When you opened the psychic link, you let our AI systems into your network. Across Vorthan space, mind ships began shutting down as human computer viruses spread through their psychic connections. The collective consciousness that had united the Vorthan Empire for millennia was being systematically infected and destroyed." On the bridge of the Prometheus, Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. 12 Titan-class ships were operating across the galaxy, each one coordinating dozens of smaller vessels. The three great empires were collapsing faster than anyone had expected. "Status report," she ordered. "Zephyrian fleet 93%. Destroyed," reported her tactical officer. "Hegemony forces down to scattered survivors. Vorthan collective consciousness is fragmenting. Most of their ships are dead in space." "Time elapsed since deadline?" 18 hours, Admiral." Chen nodded. The operation was proceeding exactly according to plan. But then her communications officer spoke up. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender broadcasts from all three empires. They're requesting terms." "Are they now?" Chen walked to the main display. "Put them through." The screen split into 3 sections. High Chancellor Cathara's crystal form was cracked and dim. General Vex 9 appeared as a flickering hologram from some emergency backup system. Overmind Zelthron was barely visible, his mental form fragmenting like static. "Humans," Cathara began, her voice barely a whisper. We surrender. We were wrong about your capabilities. We ask for mercy." "Our fleets are broken," Vex 9 added. "We cannot continue resistance. Name your terms for our submission." Overmind, Zelthron's mental voice was weak and scattered. "We acknowledge human superiority. We submit to your rule. Please, stop the killing." Chen looked at the 3 rulers, who had threatened humanity just hours before. They had issued an ultimatum demanding that humans abandon their colonies. Now they were begging for mercy. "Your surrender is noted," she said calmly. "However, the operation will continue until all military threats to human space are eliminated." "But we surrender," Cathara protested. "In galactic law, surrender ends. Hostilities!" Chen's expression didn't change. "Your ultimatum gave humanity 72 hours to comply or face annihilation. You began attacking our colonies the moment the deadline expired. You made it clear that this was a war of extermination." She leaned forward. "So that's what you'll get. Not conquest, not occupation. Extermination of your military capacity. Every warship, every weapons platform, every military installation will be destroyed. When we're finished, none of you will have the ability to threaten anyone ever again." 3 alien leaders stared in horror. "This is not how civilized warfare is conducted," Vex 9 protested. "You're absolutely right," Chen replied. "Civilized warfare involves negotiations, proportional responses, and rules of engagement. But you made it clear you don't consider humans civilized. You treated us like vermin to be exterminated." She smiled coldly. "So, we're responding like the barbarians you think we are. The difference is, we're much better at total warfare than you ever imagined." The transmission ended, leaving the 3 Empire leaders staring at blank screens. Across the galaxy, human ships continued their methodical destruction of 3 civilizations that had ruled space for millennia. But something else was happening too. On every world where the fighting had ended, human vessels were broadcasting a different message. To all civilian populations, Admiral Chen's voice echoed across thousands of worlds. This is a message from the United Earth Nations. The war is between humanity and your military forces only. Civilian populations will not be harmed. Medical aid and emergency supplies are available for any world that requests them. We are not conquerors. We are not exterminators. But we will not allow anyone to threaten human families ever again. The night of annihilation was almost over. When dawn came, the galaxy would be a very different place. The first light of dawn broke across the Zephyrian homeworld, but the crystal cities no longer sang their ancient melodies. In the orbital space around the planet, debris from what had once been the greatest fleet in galactic history drifted in silent clouds. The harmonic network that had connected every Zephyrian ship for 10,000 years was permanently silent. High Chancellor Kythera stood in her throne room, watching through crystal windows as human ships moved through her system. They were not the massive titans that had broken her fleets. These were smaller vessels, but still larger than anything her people could build. They moved with purpose, scanning the wreckage and cataloging the destruction. Chancellor, her aide, whispered, "The humans are requesting permission to land shuttles on the surface." Kythera's crystal form had lost all its bright colors. She looked gray and lifeless, like stone instead of living crystal. "What do they want?" "They say they're bringing medical supplies and emergency food for our civilian population." This confused her. "Why would they help us? We are their enemies." The aide consulted his information crystal. "Their message says they distinguish between military targets and civilians. They claim they have no quarrel with our people, only with our government's decision to threaten human colonies." Kythera was silent for a long time. In all her thousands of years, she had never heard of conquerors who brought aid to the people they had defeated. When the three empires conquered other species, they took resources and slaves. They certainly didn't provide medical care. Tell them they have permission to land," she said finally. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of worlds. The hegemony's bio-cities were dark and still, their living computers dead from the psychic backlash that had destroyed their fleet coordination systems. But human vessels were arriving with generators and medical equipment to keep the civilian population alive. On Vorthon worlds, where the collapse of the collective consciousness had left millions of people mentally isolated for the first time. In their lives, human doctors and counselors were setting up treatment centers to help with the psychological trauma. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching reports flow in from across human space. Operation Nightfall was complete. In less than 24 hours, 3 galactic empires that had existed for millennia had been reduced to scattered survivors and undefended civilian populations. "Final casualty reports, Admiral," her tactical officer announced. "Go ahead." Zephyrian. Military, 97% destroyed. Hegemony forces, 94% eliminated. Vortan fleet, 99% neutralized. Total enemy military capacity assessed as 0. And our losses? 12 human personnel injured, no deaths. Minor damage to 3 escort vessels. All Titan-class ships fully operational. Chen nodded. The operation had gone exactly as planned. Humanity had demonstrated that threatening human colonies would result in swift and overwhelming retaliation. But more importantly, they had shown the galaxy that humans could be both terrible in war and merciful in victory. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Communications Network. It's being broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy." "Put it through." The main screen filled with images from across space. News broadcasters from dozens of different species were all reporting the same story. The 3 great empires were gone. Humanity had emerged as the dominant military power in the galaxy. But what shocked most alien populations was what happened. Next, instead of demanding tribute or seizing territory, the humans were offering aid. On the screen, a Zephyrian news broadcaster spoke in a voice filled with wonder. "Human medical ships have arrived at our colonies throughout the former empire. They are providing free treatment for injuries sustained during the battles. They are not asking for payment or submission. They simply say that civilian casualties are unacceptable." A hegemony reporter added, "Human engineers are helping to restore our biosystems damaged in the fighting." When asked why they would help former enemies, they said that the war was between governments, not peoples. Chen smiled as she watched the broadcasts. This was the most important part of the operation, showing the galaxy that humans were not like the empires they had just destroyed. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Begin Phase 3. Humanitarian Operations. Across human space, the massive Titan-class vessels began a different kind of deployment. Manufacturing bays that had produced weapons of war were retooled to create medical supplies, food processors, and emergency shelter systems. The same ships that had annihilated 3 empires now became mobile relief centers. On the Zephyrian homeworld, human shuttles landed in the crystal cities carrying supplies and personnel. The aliens watched in amazement as human soldiers who had just destroyed their fleet now helped injured civilians and repaired damaged infrastructure. Dr. Sarah Kim, the chief medical officer for the relief mission, found herself treating High Chancellor Cathara herself. The former ruler's crystal body had been damaged by psychic shock when her fleet was destroyed. "Why are you helping me?" Cathara asked, as Dr. Kim used human technology to repair the cracks in her crystal form. "I ordered the attack on your colonies." "Because you're hurt and I'm a doctor," Dr. Kim replied simply. "And because the war is over." "Over?" Cathara sounded confused. "But you have conquered us. Surely now comes the occupation, the slavery, the extraction of resources." Dr. Kim paused in her work. "Is that what you would have done to us?" Cathara was silent for a moment. "Yes," she admitted. "If we had won, we would have enslaved your species and taken your worlds for our own use." "Well, we're not you," Dr. Kim said. "Humans have learned some hard lessons from our own history. We know what happens when one group tries to dominate others. It never ends well for anyone." Similar conversations were happening across the former empires. Human aid workers were meeting with alien civilians who couldn't understand why their conquerors were being so kind. 3 months later, Admiral Chen stood before the newly formed Galactic Assembly on a space station that orbited the former council headquarters. Representatives from every known species had gathered to hear humanity's terms for the new galactic order. "The 3 empires are gone," she announced. "But we have no desire to replace them with a human empire. Empires are what caused this war in the first place." She gestured to a holographic display showing the galaxy. "Instead, we propose the formation of the Terran Commonwealth, a federation of free worlds where every species has a voice and every planet can govern itself according to its own traditions." The alien representatives murmured among themselves. This was not what they had expected from a victorious military force. "What about tribute?" asked a delegate from a species that had served the Zephyrian Empire. "What about resource extraction?" "There will be no tribute," Chen replied. "Each world will keep what it produces. What we ask for in return is simple. Agree to peaceful resolution of disputes, and promise never to threaten the civilian populations of other species." "And if we refuse?" asked another delegate. Chen's expression grew serious. "Then you'll discover why it's a very bad idea to threaten human families, but we hope it won't come to that." A year later, the Commonwealth was thriving. Trade between species had increased dramatically now that the old empire barriers were gone. Scientific cooperation had led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Most importantly, there had been no wars between member species. On Earth, Admiral Chen walked through a memorial garden dedicated to the colonies that had been threatened during the crisis. She stopped at a statue depicting families from different human worlds, parents and children who had almost been forced to abandon their homes. Captain Rodriguez joined her. "Any regrets about how we handled things, Admiral?" Chen looked up at the stars visible through the garden's transparent dome. "No," she said. "We did what we had to do. Sometimes the only way to prevent a war is to fight one so decisively that nobody wants to try again." The alien species seemed to be adapting well to the new system. Most of them, yes. Turns out a lot of species were tired of being ruled by the 3 empires. They just never had an alternative before. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "Do you think they understand why we did it? Why we responded so thoroughly?" Chen smiled. "I think they're starting to. The galaxy spent so long thinking that might makes right. They forgot that sometimes you have to prove you're the strongest just so you can choose to be gentle." She gestured toward the stars where human ships now patrolled trade routes and protected colonies of dozens of different species. "We showed them that humans can be absolutely terrifying when we need to be. But more importantly, we showed them that we choose not to be most of the time." The Titan-class ships helped with that message. "Exactly. It's one thing to say you want peace. It's another thing to say it while standing next to a 47-kilometer warship that can crack planets. Now, when we talk about peaceful cooperation, everyone knows we have other options if talking doesn't work. In the years that followed, the story of humanity's one-night war became legendary across the galaxy. Alien children grew up hearing about the massive human warships that had appeared from nowhere to destroy 3 ancient empires in a single day. But they also heard about the human doctors and engineers who had arrived immediate,